I've had some requests on doing spittoons. I start out with a bowl blank that's a little bit larger. If I was going to do a bowl, I'd probably only need this much. So these are a little bit thicker bowl blanks. First thing we do then is bring in the stem center into the chuck, and then get our blank centered up in the lathe. And I usually put them in there kind of lightly, and then I bring my tool rest in and I can spin them around and see how close I am. And I got that one, yes, pretty close. Go ahead and tighten them in. And now we're going to start rounding the outside and getting a tenon on the bottom. Now I should probably use a better bowl gouge, but this one I've kind of getting down to the end of the life for this bowl gouge. But we'll start out kind of a slow speed, and we'll start rounding off this way. And as you can see, I somewhat try to get the bevel on the wedge, and I don't go up. Notice I'm trying to get my center about here. This is going to be my bowl, and then it'll be real thin right in here, and then the lip up here. So we're not rounding clear up the blade. I'm trying to get in here now to get a tenon on the wedge. We'll reset the tool rest so that I can get into that tenon a little bit easier. So there I have room for my tenon now. Now I'm going to round this on out. And we're starting to do pretty good in there. Then I'll use my squared off scraper to finish up that tenon. And we'll go ahead and clean that up. And then a lot of times I'll use my beveled scraper, and I can come around on it and really smooth out that edge there. And from there we've got pretty much the bottom of the form done. I'm a little bit shallow here, but that's not of any consequence now. Next thing we'll do is we start in here, and we need to taper in so to here, and then this will flare out. So we just start in here with a bowl gouge again, and sometimes I do a pull, scrape on this. We're starting to get it balanced out so we can bring the lathe speed up a little. And so now we'll just start cleaning that out and getting our lip up there. I'll come in and figure out where I can still hear the chatter, so it's not quite round yet. And that feels smooth. We can come in from this side, like this. Then we can come in here and do a drag cut. And as you can see, we're trying to get in here and get some depth in here. Come in from this side. Okay, we can come in here like this, and we can come in from this side. Now you want to be careful you don't catch this little wing here on the other side of the bowl. And if you really want to make it, you can round that out like that a little bit. Come in here and make sure that that's pretty smooth. And so now we've kind of got the top of our pot, and we've got the bottom. We're still just a little bit too flat here, so we're going to take some of this off. But that doesn't look too bad. So we can flip it around now and work on the other side. So now we'll loosen up the tailstock, get it out of the way. We'll take our spur center out, and we can go ahead and put our tenon into the chuck, tightening down good. Bring our tool rest around, and now we're ready to start on the face. Now I usually like to come in and kind of define my edge here. First thing, then I can start into the center, then I can start hollowing out in the inside. I'm trying to get some depth to it, but I'm also more worried right now about just getting this lip defined. And we'll come in and off and on we need to check the thickness of that, and I'm still pretty thick. So we've basically made a bowl up on top of a bowl, you could almost say, and that thickness feels pretty good. Now we'll go work on the inside. Okay, for the inside I'll get my tool rest turned in a little bit more, and then we'll just start in here with our bowl gouge, and now we're going for depth. I suppose I could use a Forester bit to take a lot of this out, but I find it almost as easy to use the bowl gouge. Then we'll adjust that tool rest in a little bit further, trying to get all the support we can out of that tool rest. Now, I can come into the bowl gouge and come clear back in and scrape around, trying to get into this curvature out here. And we need to watch that we don't make this opening any bigger than we're cut back here. And the depth that we're cut here, that we still leave this thick enough. So you need to check that once in a while. I just use fingers usually, and make sure that I'm not trying to make the opening too big here and cut the whole top ring off. But I can go quite a bit farther. Okay, so we're still working at getting that rounded out in there. And sometimes I'll go back and lay the tool back this way and use a pull cut. It's usually not quite as easy. Once I start getting about to that depth, I'll switch over to my 1-inch round nose scraper and start with it. Now the hard part is we need to get the tool rest in a little bit farther. The main thing you need to do is make sure that you get that nib right out of the bottom. Getting the tool rest about centered, raising the scraper high and coming into the center and kind of working down like this, I find the best way to kind of cut that nib out of the bottom. And sometimes going I'll come this way sometimes, and I'll go back the other way sometimes. So I kind of work it both directions. And once I get the bottom a little bit defined, we can use our depth gauge, and we can set that up. This length being the depth of the bowl, so as you can see I've still got about an inch or so to go. While that bottom's still pretty thick, I like to start working on getting this. For that, we'll have to come around at a little bit different angle. So to get the corners of the bowl, I come clear around here with my scraper and start in here. And there is quite a bit of pressure pulling up on the handle there. But I use my hand here to pivot with against the tool rest. And as you can see, it takes out quite a bit of time. You do have to watch here that you don't get your knuckles shoved into the rim of the bowl. And we can come back and work on getting that nib out of the bottom again. And try to follow it around. See, we're cutting a lot of wood going by the amount of shavings. And it's probably about time to stop and take a feel and see what the thickness is. I'm still pretty thick in here. Looking down from the top, between here and here, I can still come in and take a little bit more out of that width there. And I just round that out with the scraper. But I still need to go quite a bit. Right back into there. And it's good once in a while to go ahead and check your depth. I've still got about 3/4 of an inch there that I can do. But I pretty much, I try to get this outside thickness, and I'm starting to feel a little bit better there. But I try to get this outside thickness up in the top half of the bowl portion, thinned down before I worry about the depth. So, I still got a ways to go here. Okay, so I think I'm I'm getting close. So let's work at getting that nib out of the bottom again. And that at times can be fun. Stop and sharpen the scraper. Okay, so let's work on that nib. And as you can see, sometimes it just wants to slide around on it and not really cut it. You just have to kind of work at it. Keep checking your depth. Trying to keep that inside shape best I can. And smoothed out. And as you can see, it's just a matter of going in with that scraper. My depth is okay now. And the bottom feels pretty smooth. I'm still a little bit thick right out here. Okay, so we keep checking our thickness there, and I'm still a little thick. Coming in and working on that thickness. You're taking out maybe a 1/16 of an inch at a time. Try to make a swing and get everything all smoothed out real nice inside. And let's take a check again. Now I feel pretty good. So we pretty much got it hollowed out and all shaped, and now it's just doing our sanding and finishing. My thickness here, oh, I'm a little bit thick, but you know, it kind of adds to it. I could come out here and taper this in a little bit more, but I don't know, I kind of like it. It looks like I've got a nice smooth transition going here, so I think we'll just leave it and go into our sanding phase. We kind of start out with some heavier grit and get the main shape down. Again, pour the leg down a little. Get inside, that's probably the hardest part to do. And I'm watching that everything is smoothing out good. I've got one add ring in there. Go to our next grit. Sanding I hate to do, but I guess it's part of the evils of turning. Now it feels like I got quite a bit of buildup of sawdust on the inside, so let's take a air hose and blow that out. Go on with our next grit. And you can The sanding can go pretty quick. And our next grit, and we seem to have all of our grits gone through. Load the sawdust out. And now we're ready to apply finish. I just take and tear off yesterday's dried paper towel. Get back to some new. And a little bit of finish on there. I usually start on the inside, and we just go until we get our finish on. As you can see, she's starting to polish up real nice. The hardest part is getting a nice even coat of finish on everything. And like I say, I just wipe it on with the rag, towel, whatever we want to call it. And we get a nice coat. Make sure you get the very bottom of it and all of your edges on the inside. Then I try to make sure I get the edge of the rim here. And then I'll start on the outside. Well, like I say, the finishing, sanding is the part I hate the most. The turning is the part that I really like. And I just kind of go down and do this in steps. And on a lot of the other videos we've showing you how to finish off the bottom and all of that. I will use a vacuum chuck to finish the bottom off. But right now we just get some finish on there, and this is just the first coat. You can go in and do as many coats as you like. I just try to even it out good and make sure I get everything coated. I will go in and do some sandpaper on this when I get done, because the finish does raise the grain just a little bit. If I get any on the lathe bed, I just use the sawdust to kind of take it. Check the inside one more time. That looks pretty good. Check for any runs. Everything looks pretty good. We'll let that finish dry, and then we can go in and do some sanding again. Alright, it's dried a little bit, so I'll use some 600 grit and go in and just kind of take off the high spots on my finish. Get it down to where it feels nice and smooth now. And now we can go in and take that bottom off. So for that, I normally, well, I can go either way. Let's go ahead and do it without the vacuum system. And this hole will actually fit the chuck. So I may just go ahead and run it right out here. Yeah, and I can hold it right there. I don't even need the neoprene disc. Now I'll bring in my tailstock again to help hold that while I get the majority of it cut off. So I'm just held on my chuck jaws, expanded out into the opening, and then I'll use a small detail gouge, and I can come in here and back scrape that. And I usually try to go clear in to the chuck. And turn that speed up a little bit. And I'm going to work this down to where I've just got kind of a small nib left in the center. Then I can come out here and start doing my taper into that center. And then I'll cut the bead down farther yet. And eventually I'm going to try to cut that clear off. When I get down close, I can remove the tailstock because my chuck is actually holding the project now. And I can go in and try to, there we go, break it off, get it off. And I can go in with my detail and clean that up. Come back out. Start in with my different grits of sandpaper. Sand that up good. And once we get it sanded, we can come back in with our finish. And go ahead and finish that bottom. Feather it out a little bit onto the other part. Got some finish on there. And now I can go in and release it off of the chuck. Okay, we release it off the chuck, and there we have our finished spittoon. The bottom's all finished. You got a nice bevel to it and some pretty nice colors to it.